Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash.
I'm Bernice.
And we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
Well, we've come to the end of Block 1 of the United Rugby Championship as we head into the autumn internationals. The Quilter Nations Series will see many of the Northern and Southern Hemisphere teams battling it out for those final world rankings before they freeze ahead of the Rugby World Cup draw that is taking place in December. Super exciting. But before we talk about the internationals and the squad selection on this episode, let's talk about Block 1 of the URC. Definitely got some standout performers. Stormers and Munster still undefeated, despite Munster having pretty tough game against Connacht, only winning by a couple of points in that one. But Stormers, very convincing, definitely come out of this first block as the winners from that top of the table still. Lions and Ulster's winning run, I think that they're a team who we see every single year do something a little bit different. They love to throw the ball around, but just haven't seemed to get that consistency. Edinburgh lose by 1 point to Cardiff, and the Welsh side, I think, are going by as dark horses in this competition. They are in the top ranks of the table. And, well, the Edinburgh loss, I saw a lot of stuff on social media where the fans were not, were not happy, to say the least. Dragons and Ospreys draw in a Welsh derby. Leinster get their second win after beating Zebre. Sharks get their first win against Scarlets. Can I just get some initial reaction, Bernice? Finally, a win for your team.
I think that sums up the reaction. It was just kind of like, finally. Yeah, I think it was by no means a perfect performance from the Sharks, but hopefully they can take something from that performance into the second block once the URC starts again. Is now you kind of want to build on that momentum going forward. So it's not ideal that it's now and then the international season, so break and then the URC season again. But regardless, we got our first win, and I think that monkey is kind of off our backs now, and it's not that thing that's in your head the whole time, like, oh, we're still chasing our first win of the season. So by no means it was a perfect performance, but I do think that it was needed for the Sharks, and yeah, we also walked away with a bonus point win, so which is good, I think, just in terms of the win and the season. So yeah, wasn't a great game, but we get the first win, and hopefully we can build from that going into the second block of the
At the end of the
URC.
day, a bonus point win is a bonus point win. You've got to take it. And after the run of form that they've had, a win like that is very important, regardless of whether we're having an international break now. There will be a couple more URC games that will be coming up in end of November or so. But yeah, for winning teams, I don't know, is this a stop of momentum or is it a good time to reset and go back to the drawing board? Because obviously with the Sharks, you've got a lot of their players who are Springbok players. So open question. If you've got a winning team at the moment, do you think internationals disrupt the flow of momentum, or is it something good for your team in terms of resting legs for players who aren't selected in those international squads? If you have any thoughts, please let us know in the comments down below. Glasgow, my team that I support, have a very good win over the Vodacom Bulls. That is becoming a very gritty rivalry between the two sides. I mean, it's always tough when you go either way, you're a South African team coming to the Northern Hemisphere. Scotland is also not an easy place to go and play, whether it's the weather conditions or whether it's the pitch. If you're not used to playing on the 3G pitch, it can be difficult, and the wind is vicious up there. As someone who lived there for basically 2 years, it's quite tough. And in Pretoria, you've got the other side, you've got the elevation. So there's definitely a home advantage for both sides, but that has turned into a rivalry that are one for the ages as well, which is great. Let's talk about the winners and the losers. Overall, from block one, let's start off with the winners. I think the Stormers are an obvious one. They have just been phenomenal. I think we've said it on every single episode we've spoken about them on the URC, but they have come out with a bang.
Yeah, so I think the Stormers and Munster definitely, even though they're undefeated, I do think they are the teams that have the biggest wins if you look at like the first block of the URC. Yeah, even though it was a very close match against Connacht, I think Munster have been starting off the season very strong, and the same with the DHL Stormers. I just think that is exactly the way you want to start the season. And to come back on what you said about is the international season gonna kind of break the momentum, or are they just gonna build on that momentum? That would be interesting to see, especially those two teams that have been doing so well in the competition. So yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see coming back from the international season what what is going to happen. But yeah, I think those two teams can be very happy with their performance. The Stormers walk away with a 3-0 win from their tour, and playing Benetton in Treviso is never easy. And it's also
No.
the Stormers' first win in Treviso. So it just goes to show the toughness of everything. But yeah, so I think those two teams definitely the biggest winners from first block.
I agree. I think two other teams that should be classed as winners with 4 out of 5 wins on both sides. Cardiff. The only game that they've lost was to Munster, and you've just given a good word on them. They're in a strong place after block one, and we've spoken on the show plenty of times before that Welsh rugby has not been in a good state. I think if you're a rugby fan, you know that Welsh rugby hasn't been in a good place for a long time. I've been listening to a couple of other different commentators in the rugby world talk about it. Sam Warburton is not only is a fantastic commentator, he was an amazing rugby player during his time, so knowledgeable. He spoke on the Times, which is a UK newspaper, but they also have a podcast called The Ruck. Just meant to drop that in there. But if you want to watch her side of the Ruck more than you listen to The Ruck. But they
Yeah.
interviewed him, and he gave a really insightful analysis of where Welsh rugby is at the minute. So, from what I have gathered and what I've read in the media, Welsh rugby will be looking to reduce to 3 teams. How that will affect the URC, I don't know, because the contracts that Welsh rugby and the 4 teams currently have with the URC will be up for debate. And obviously, the URC will not want to lose, just speaking from a personal point of view, they won't want to lose one Welsh team because then that puts an imbalance in the table. But who knows? That's not going to happen immediately, but that is just something that will be happening and look at in the future. But Cardiff are in a strong position, 4 out of 5 wins to losses. That's pretty good. I think as well, Cardiff were unlucky last season to miss out on the top 8, but it's nice to see that they're in a healthy position. Glasgow are in a great position. I mean, I'm biased. I always say this, but Franco Smith is a fantastic coach. What is it in the water in South Africa that produces so many great coaches? I don't know what it is because you've got Franco and you've also got Johan van Gran, who is head coach for Bath, and he is a fantastic guy as well. And I think there's definitely similarities between those two coaches. Now, they probably will be different in what they do on the field, but the ambition, but also the not feeling the need to comment on other teams in the sense, I think other teams like
Mm.
Saracens, for example, we've discussed, have really brought up the rivalry in the Gallagher Prem here in England, which some people love and some people are like, oh, I'm not really sure about that. Bath tend to be very kind of like straight and narrow when it comes to like they don't say anything controversial in the media, and it was very much that was the same attitude that comes out of the Warriors camp too. So yeah, I don't know what it is in South Africa that means you guys produce great coaches, but you really do. So yeah, Glasgow off to a great start as well and bounced back since the learnings from that game in Treviso against Benetton. But as you mentioned, Bernice, it's a tough place to go and play. Losers from
Yeah.
block one, I have to say Scarlets. They're in a tough position. They haven't won any games this year, despite having one match postponed. So they've only played 4 out of 4 games, yet to play another one. Their future as a club also has a question mark around it. It seems like the discussion after the consultation with the WRU seems that Scarlets or Ospreys are one of the 2 teams that could potentially disappear in the next few years. Again, not confirmed. I feel sorry for any fans that are Scarlets or big Osprey fans because both clubs have rich and lengthy histories. And it's like saying, like for either of us, saying one of our teams collapsed or had to close as a business for whatever that means. You don't just switch alliances. Like I've met people in England who were fans of Wasps, were fans of London Irish, 2 teams that had to collapse because of financial issues, and people really want their teams to come back. Worcester Warriors is an example of a team that had financial issues and is now back in the English Champ, which is the division below the Gallagher Prem. So you don't just switch affiliations like that, and I think that's something that hasn't necessarily been a consideration. But at the same time, when the crowd sizes are only 4 or 5 thousand per game, where's the revenue coming in? What's the spending happening? And would it make Welsh rugby better quality if you have all the best players in the country spread across three clubs rather than four. So they're in a tough spot. Don't know about their future, but they're not performing great this season. Despite, I know you said that against the Sharks that there was a really great try that was scored in that game by the Scarlets, but they've just not seemed to found any sort of winning form. Can I put a question around Leinster as losers from this
Yeah.
block?
I was about to say that I think from my point of view, they would be the losers from this block, and not in terms of their performance. They walk away with 2 out of 5 wins, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken. And yeah, it's not bad. It's still early. We know the URC season is very long. But I think when you compare their performance this season to where they were last season, so Leinster, they are the champs.
mm,
So I'm not saying, they won't come out on top, or they won't be given the opportunity to defend their title. But just in terms of where they are now versus where they were last season, I mean, Glasgow are ranked first in the log. Like, it looks completely different compared to
mm,
the log last season,
mm,
even in the early stages of the tournament. So I don't think Leinster will be too happy with their performances across
mm.
the first block of the competition. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think they might need the international season for them to kind of bounce back and to get into a
Mm.
rhythm and hopefully find that momentum, because the Six Nations also start early next year. So it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think Leinster had a tough start to this season.
Yes, I agree. There also seems to be a big disparity between their first team, their second team, and their third team. And it's
Yeah.
very rare that you can say any club in the economy that we live in now that can have three teams, but Leinster does have three teams. So whether during this international block, the boys that haven't been selected for Ireland, which I mean, there's the Irish squad. If you look at it, there's a lot of Leinster boys in there, which does not surprise me. I will get onto this in the second half of this
Yeah.
episode, but that doesn't surprise me with Andy Farrell's selection. So, do they go back to the drawing board and try and get a bit more cohesion and really put the guys who you would say as B team players and put them through not the ringer of training, but you really, really push them through this time rather than giving them a rest? Or do you rest them and make sure that they're feeling fresh legs, fresh lungs, fresh mind, fresh body going into it, because you're not going to see many of the guys that will represent Ireland in this Quilter Nations series in the rounds
Mhm.
coming back into the URC, because there'll be rules around them resting and recovery, etc., etc. Leinster are definitely not in the best place that they've been in, probably in the history of the URC. I think they will bounce back, knowing them. I think also the fans are incredibly
Mm.
vocal. They will not accept Leinster not doing well in a competition. I think there are certain teams across the world where their fans hold their club to impeccably high standards. And from my perspective, I think that
Mm.
Leinster has fans like that. So maybe the internationals will be a good reset. Maybe it will give them a bit more ambition. And also, maybe it has been rugby fatigue. It could go the other way. They play on to internationals and they come back to club and then they don't play any better because they're like, oh, tired now after the autumn internationals. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when we get to block two of the URC. But in the meantime, we have the autumn internationals returning, and here in England, it's now the clocks have gone back. It's now dark and rainy. It really is feeling like autumn and winter here, as I feel like in the southern hemisphere, the sun shines only
Um,
getting brighter. So let's talk about some of the squads in the Autumn Nations series. Bernice, you've got your Springboks jersey on. I'm liking it. Talk to me about the Springbok squad.
yeah. Yeah, as you can tell, we are very happy that international rugby is back and Bok rugby is
Mm,
back. There's just always such a nice vibe in South Africa when
mm.
international rugby returns, and people are always so hyped and people talk about it the whole week. So now it's 5 weeks of pure international rugby, and yeah, we can't wait. But on the squad, so on the team specifically that will be playing Japan, Zachary Porter will be making his debut, which I think, is an incredible milestone for someone like that. I think there have been talks in the last week, 2 weeks, that he might be making his debut against Japan. So it wasn't as much of a surprise, but I think it just goes to show that Rassi is really open to allowing players into the squad, giving them their exposure to the test match feel and to how it is to being in the Springbok squad. And yeah, I
Mm,
think just the faith that he has in that player to put him in the starting lineup against Japan. And yes, I know a lot of people will go around saying, yeah, but it's just Japan. I mean, if you saw the scoreboard last weekend, Japan versus Australia, like that's scary. Either way, I think it will be a big moment for him. Yeah, just in general, I think Rasi selected a very strong squad and a very strong team as well for this weekend. If you look at players like Grant Williams, if you look at the forward pack, like he is not playing around and he is
mm.
taking this match seriously. And I think this will be really good preparation going into the rest of the autumn internationals. But yeah, I think
Mm.
he did very well in the selections, and it just goes to show the respect that he also has for Japan. And yeah, I think we'll be up for the challenge.
For sure, that would be a good game. Played at Wembley in North London, which
Yeah.
so I mean, there's a big South African contingent in London. I suppose it's neutral territory, but it won't be. I think we'll get quite a big. There'll be a big turnout. There'll be a big crowd and a big South Africa crowd there as well. A word on Japan. They're not a team to be underestimated. I think
Yeah.
they can really penetrate gaps on the field when teams become a little bit exposed or their team or their defense becomes a little bit careless, let's say. They also, as an economy, have pumped loads of money into rugby. With their new leagues, they're recruiting players. There's loads of South African players. There's loads of English and Scottish players that go over to Japan because you get offered a really great deal over there. Whether it's international school for your children, whether you're at the end of your career and you want to make loads of money but you don't want to play in France, I get it. So Japan has a really good offering at the minute, and I think their national team is only going to get better and better and better. Are they up there with the top six sides in the world at the minute? I don't think so, not consistently, but could they be there in the future? Absolutely. Few words on the Northern Hemisphere squads. I'm going to start with Scotland's selection because Gregor Townsend always picks a ridiculously large squad. He's picked 45 players for this upcoming series of
Crazy.
autumn internationals. And sometimes I do question certain fixtures that Scotland have, whether it's a summer tour or an autumn nations tour. Like that, this weekend, they're playing the USA at Scottish Gash Murrayfield. Why? That is not a competitive fixture for them at all.
Yeah.
And then I think I look at the 45 player squad, I'm like, everybody knows who watches men's rugby what Scotland's best team is by a mile
Yeah.
by a mile. Like, okay, there might be a few changes in the forwards, there might be a few changes in the second row, depending on injuries. But that back line, come on, it's obvious. Like,
Yeah.
I think, like, why have you picked so many different? Like, he's picked equivalent to 4 to 5 fly halves for his squad. I'm sorry, Finn Russell will always start at 10 for Scotland without a doubt. Now, there have been some performances where he can blow hot and cold, but ultimately, when he's on fire, his distribution game is amazing. His kicking can be excellent, or kicks from hand during a game. He has had difficulties kicking two posts. I saw that when Bath came to Leicester Tigers, which thank God Finn missed his kicks. There was only 2 points in that game, and Leicester came out on top. But normally he can slot kicks like really crazy, and that is an area of his game I know that has been really pushed at Bath under Johan van Gran. Why have you picked all of these different fly halves to give them extra caps, or I don't know, is it preparation if you're worried about injuries? But I'm amazed at how big his squad selections are. But anyway, Sione Tuipulotu captains the Scots. I think that is so well deserved. He was amazing during the Lions tour. He's always been a very good player, but he's really matured into a fantastic leader. And he's always been part of the Glasgow Warriors leadership group. And he works really well with Kyle Steyn and the other leaders within that group. But it's great to see him captain Scotland because I think he's really grown into that role. And I can't wait to see him lead the Scots out this time round. England. They select a 36 player squad. Steve Borthwick. I love Steve. But he's very particular. I think from what I've gathered and what I've read about what other players have spoken about him, he's very data driven and he'll look at all the stats in the Gallagher Prem and he'll look at all the stats in training for England camps and stuff. But with Tom Willis basically announcing that he's going to move to France next year, he's kind of ruled himself out of World Cup contention because the rules are in England, if you don't play in England, you don't get selected. You can
Mm.
debate whether you like that rule or not, but that's just how it is with the RFU's rules at the moment. So he was going to be our starting eight, really. And Borthwick's just gone, well, you've signed the death of your position. You're not going to be included in any of these squads. So then it's like, all right, who's going to start at eight? Now I would be like Ben Earl and he is starting at
Mm.
eight ahead of this weekend against Australia because he can move seamlessly between seven and eight and has been played at inside centre before, which I kind of get why, because he's such a great ball carrier. But because he's kind of fluid in those positions, he's not an out and out eight. England have not seemed to have selected an out and out eight in this squad, which surprises me. They've picked a lot of wingers as well, far too many wingers for an international squad, if you ask me. However, they're looking to move Northampton Saints winger into the outside centre, which they have done in this squad, which is Tommy Freeman. But he has also expressed in the media that he wanted to move from wings to the centres. Interesting choice. I think we'll see a very big aerial battle in the game against Australia. I am disappointed. I am going to say this is massive Tigers bias here. Huge Tigers bias here right now. Because I'm going to say two players who I feel are unlucky to not get selected. Adam Radwan on the wing. He's really improved his defence at the club, and I think it's been unlucky because when he was with Newcastle before they were bought by the Red Bulls, he joined Tigers around 18 months ago or so. I can't remember the exact timeline now. His attack was always amazing. His defence is what he lacked in. Now he's a great tackler. He is also good under the high ball, and he's got amazing footwork. His speed is impeccable, but maybe he's just not the type of winger that Steve Borthwick is looking to play. But personally, I feel disappointed for him. And Emeka Ilione, he is really making the rounds. I mean, if you've been watching Leicester Tigers for the same amount of time that I have, he's about the same age as you and I, Bernice. He is a student medic at the University of Nottingham. He's a very intelligent guy. He's got a great rugby head on his shoulders, but he is a battering ram. Absolutely massive. And he's been included in the England training camps, but not selected for the official squad. I think that's unlucky, but at the same time, from a club point of view, I'm not sad that he won't be included for England because one of our other number eights is included in the Welsh squad. A well-deserved call-up, if you ask me. Ilione is a better jackler as well as a good ball carrier, but someone like Ben Earl is faster, I think, in terms of he's just a little bit quicker. Ben Earl's been lined up with Guy Pepper and Sam Underhill. Sam Underhill and Guy Pepper play with each other regularly. I think a lot of commentators have said Pepper was the Henry Pollock before Henry Pollock in terms of skill.
Oh.
It's just
Mm.
Pollock is obviously a great media personality, but Pollock
Mm.
on the bench, his inclusion in the squad, you've got to love him. I absolutely love watching him and not sure about the new haircut though. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the bright bleach blonde hair?
Ah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see it in a white jersey because I feel
Yeah.
like we've seen it in greens, so we know how that
Yeah.
looks like. But I don't know. I think it will take some time, but I think it is growing on me. But yeah, I think it just fits the whole like media, like big media personality. Now
Uh,
it's got a new hairstyle, so now it's even like bigger. So I think he knows exactly what he's doing.
yeah, Slim Shady, please stand up. I think
Yeah.
he'll be definitely making a lot of impressions, I think, in this
Yeah.
Quilter Nations series. My one question mark is Caden Murley for England. Plays on the wing. When he got his first England cap, he both had an amazing performance and an atrocious one, all in the same game. He scores a try, but everything else that he did on the pitch was horrific. And he is
Oh.
very good for Harlequins. But Harlequins are in a bit of a spot at the minute in the Gallagher Prem. They're not playing very, very well. They had one amazing match against Saracens. They put loads of points on the Newcastle Red Bulls, but every other team, they've been pretty dire, I would say. Now, some of that
Mm.
was also to do with they didn't have their internationals back, a hefty contingent from Argentina, Marcus Smith, etc. But even then, I don't know. I know it's bias, but I would pick Radwan over Murley. But I'm sure Steve has his plans. At the end of the day, I think if someone's had an unlucky performance in an international jersey and maybe they've lost confidence and then regain the confidence during training camps, give them a chance to play. But he's not playing this against Australia. So but I doubt. I'm not sure why he's been included in the squad. But if you have any thoughts on it, please convince me that I'm wrong. I'd like to know. I'd like to hear another perspective and hear other people's thoughts. So please let us know in the comment section. Wales, 39 player squad that has an average age of 26. That is young. 9 Cardiff players and 8 Ospreys players. Now, there's a big difference of where those two teams sit in the URC table. So we'll see how that comes off. They're led by Jack Morgan. Unsurprising, given the Lions call up. He's probably the most experienced international in terms of the fact that he's played with the Lions, the fact that he's playing very well at club level, the fact that he plays very well for Wales. He's one of their most consistent performers. I get it. Ireland, am I shocked by this selection? Absolutely not. What were your thoughts when you saw that squad, given how Leinster haven't stepped up in the URC?
Yeah, I think we've seen it, and now that you've mentioned Steve Borthwick and kind of like his view on Ben Earl, I just think certain coaches have certain styles of play, and they just
Mm,
have some players they will always select over another player because of their style of play, just because they kind of slot in better with the game plan. And I think that's kind of the case also with South Africa, and people have said, for example, that Faf du Plessis is not really part of Jerry Flannery's game plan and kind of what
mm,
he wants to do at the Springboks. So I think that's kind of the same thing with Andy Farrell. Obviously, we've seen Andy Farrell coach the British and Irish Lions. Now he's coaching Ireland. So yeah, even with the British and Irish Lions squad, there were a lot of Leinster players. So
mm.
I'm not saying they are not like the players don't deserve to be in the squad, or there's certain players that shouldn't be there. But yeah, I think there might be a little bit of biasness there. Maybe not bias per se, but maybe just kind of comfort in a sense, like knowing
Yeah.
what you're going to get in those players and knowing how
Mm,
they're going to play, knowing what you'll get from them. So yeah, I think bias is definitely the wrong word. I think it kind of comes from a place of he knows what he's going to get from those players and he knows what they are going to give him. So I think we'll have to wait and see how the season goes for all, how the international season goes for them. But they have some tough games ahead of them.
Italy, I think they've been building a fairly consistent squad. There's none of them that really surprised me in that squad. I think they're a team that are building, again, still not penetrating into the top 5. I don't think they will with the other teams that hold those positions. Still a big name missing from the French squad, Antoine Dupont. But if people are wondering where he is, he's still recovering from his injury that he got during the Men's Six Nations this year. But otherwise, I've looked at the French squad and I've gone, yeah, that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. So I'm really excited to see some of these fixtures and see what teams really test each other. And I think we'll be in for some big drama, big hits, loads of action, and a lot of drama. My weekend predictions, you've only got a couple of games this weekend. I'm just going to say, obviously, England to win. Got to back my team by 5. And I'm going to say Scotland to win by 20.
Okay, nice. I like that. I like that. I think so. I definitely say Scotland to win by 15. I thought a lot about this fixture, and you are not gonna like me for this
Oh no!
one. But mine is just the other way around. I think Australia will win by 5 points. But yeah, I always feel so torn when I have to look at Australia when they play, because like you say, it's either gonna go really well or it's gonna be underwhelming. So because we haven't really seen them, like the last game we saw them play in was in the Rugby Championship, so it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, just for the Southern Hemisphere in general, like I'm really hoping that they'll have a good tour, but they also have a tough tour ahead of them.
Mm,
So
mm.
it's going to be interesting. And then the big one for us, South Africa versus Japan. Yeah, the way I see the game go is tied. I think Japan is going to come out guns blazing. I think there is going to be a lot of support for Japan and for the Springboks as well, but I think people are going to want to see Japan do well. So think it's going to be a tight match in the first few minutes, and then hopefully the Springboks end up on top. So I think the Springboks to win by 15 points. And then the Ireland versus New Zealand match, I think that is going to be the match of the weekend. I'm really looking forward to that matchup, and it's very difficult to call that match, but I do think they are playing on neutral ground, so they'll be
Mm.
playing in Chicago, makes it a lot more interesting. But yeah, I think Ireland will win the match by 3 points.
Oh, that's an interesting call.
Mm,
For me, the Springboks
yeah,
win against Japan, and I'm going to go for even bigger scoreline. I'm going to say 25 points. I think
yeah.
you're right on your prediction. I think it will be close to start with, but I just think the Bok pack, there's not many teams that can stand up to the Bok pack, especially when they're having a good day. And where Razzie's ambitions will be ahead of the World Cup and how important this series is in terms of the Springboks wanting to retain top spot on the world rankings, it will be crucial for them to get a win against Japan. And I think they'll go big because they won't be going home anytime soon. I need to stop with my horrific puns. Um,
No, I
yeah,
like that one.
okay, good. That's the main thing. I think 25. Yeah, I'm going big. 25 points. I think Japan will play well, but I just don't think they'll be able to overpower the Springbok pack. Neutral ground in Chicago. I think there's always a big Irish contingent. There's a big Irish contingent in America, particularly in Chicago, if my knowledge is correct. I think they'll have a great crowd there. And I think it's interesting that they're playing it in Chicago in terms of trying to grow the
Mm.
game over stateside, but I do understand it and I can see why they've done that. I'm saying the All Blacks to win. I think the All Blacks will
Ah.
have a point to prove after not winning the Rugby Championship, and I think that they will win by 4 points. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. We will be covering the Autumn Nations series on the next few episodes, so please get involved, drop us a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, hit that red subscribe button and join our community of rugby lovers across the world. If you like this episode, hit the thumbs up button because we love to know that you enjoy all of our discussions and content. But for now, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Signing off from the UK is me, Tash.
Signing off from South Africa is me, Bernice.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.